Lock in fresh juice with the newest hip-hop and R&B.
Every Wednesday night from 9 to 11 p.m.
on Rainier Avenue Radio.
You know we got the dopest artists rocking with us every single week. It's myself, D-Money.
Taylor Hart.
And Pint-Sized Patron, which is fresh juice every Wednesday. It's Trilltopia.
Thursday, January 14th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Make sure and tune in to Rainier Avenue Radio. King County and NAMI present the Mental Health Awareness Special Program. Look, you deserve to be heard and understood. And just saying it's hard to navigate this world is an understatement. Council member Zahi Lai and National Alliance on Mental Illness Seattle are hosting a live town hall next Thursday, the 14th, 6 to 7, coming up with panelists from King County, Black mental health experts. Learn about resources, ask questions, and let your voice be heard. You can listen right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. You can watch on Facebook. You can watch on YouTube. You can watch on Twitch. Let's come together and support each other again Thursday, 6 to 7:30, right here on Rainier Avenue Radio, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Seattle, hosted by King County Council member Mai Zahi Lai. Let your voice be heard.
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Don't forget to log on www.RainierAvenueRadio.world.
You're listening to the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I'm Asher. Today is Wednesday, January 13th. The news on Rainier Avenue Radio is live every Wednesday from 6:30 to 7, providing you with current, trustworthy, useful news content focused on super service to the local South Seattle audience. We will not tell you what to think, but instead provide the tools and basics for you to discern and decide for yourself. Tonight, we'll talk about the Seattle schools investigation, the first woman executed by the federal government since the 50s, the Ugandan internet blackout, and Harden leaving the Rockets. Now on to the local news. I am here alone today because my coworkers are still lacking internet access. More than 500,000 residents were without power in Western Washington Wednesday morning after 70-mile-per-hour winds whipped through the area, ripping power lines and trees from the water-soaked earth, according to the National Weather Service in Seattle. Rivers are expected to crest on Wednesday and into Thursday. On Thursday evening, another rainstorm is expected to hit, but it will be comparatively weak with significantly lighter rain than we've seen in the last few days. Seattle Public Schools said that about 30% of staff and families were affected by the outage, along with 13 school buildings, where some staff still work, Christine Claridge of the Seattle Times reports. There is more than $1 billion up for grabs this week, and that's great news for Washington's lottery, as well as their education beneficiaries. Wednesday's Powerball jackpot is $550 million. There was no jackpot winner on Tuesday for Mega Millions drawing, worth $625 million. The one Washingtonian won $1 million. The next Mega Millions drawing is Thursday. The odds of winning both are too ridiculous to consider, writes King 5's Chris Cashman. But about 18 cents of every dollar goes to support the Washington Opportunities Pathways account, an education program that funds college scholarships and grants, as well as early childhood education programs. Last year, $147 million went to education programs from state lottery sales, which paid college funds for 18,000 people in Washington. The U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights is investigating Seattle Public Schools, stating in a Tuesday letter to Superintendent Denise Juneau that it had heard, quote-unquote, disturbing reports of how the district handled special education during the pandemic. The letter cites concerns that some students with disabilities went without specialized instruction, and some teachers weren't allowed to provide it. Quote, according to one local news report last spring, the district told its special education teachers, quote, not to deliver specially designed instruction and disallowed them from adapting lessons to each child's needs, officials wrote. When schools resumed in the fall, many students with disabilities hadn't had meaningful interactions with an educator in months, the Seattle Times reports. keep an eye out for developments with this story. A national sharp rise in domestic violence is alarming police departments across the country, including Seattle. In 2020, the city saw the highest number of homicides in 26 years, with, quote, 50 people willfully murdered, said interim police chief Adrian Diaz. In 2019, there were 31. Diaz says 2020 was a year like no other, and he is looking at the numbers with that in mind, Natalie Swabe of King 5 reports. Most victims were between the ages of 18 and 49, and 49% of the victims were Black, according to Diaz. Diaz is also a member of the National Commission on COVID-19 and Criminal Justice. A report prepared for the commission examined crime rates in 28 American cities. It found the homicide rates increased by 42% during the summer and 34% in the fall compared with the same time periods in 2019. Seattle has been given the green light on distributing more of the COVID-19 vaccine. Seattle Fire is launching 2 mobile teams, which Mayor Durkin said will begin administering the vaccine as early as January 14th, King 5 reports. Under Washington's vaccine rollout plan, high-risk healthcare workers, high-risk first responders, and long-term care residents are the first eligible to receive the doses. However, Durkin's and other officials' vague language and lack of tangible community outreach has puzzled many residents, who are increasingly hesitant to trust the vaccine and its rollout. Learn more during Rainier Avenue Radio's coronavirus special news broadcasts. That all comes as the Trump administration asked governors nationwide to rapidly expand eligibility to receive doses. The abrupt federal policy shift on prioritization, which will make nearly a third of Americans eligible to be vaccinated, represents a departure from months of state planning and federal guidance on who should be eligible. It could up the vaccination rate, but it also threatens to add further confusion to an already rocky rollout and raises questions on how to best ensure equitable access to the doses. A spokesperson for Governor Inslee said the state would merely, quote-unquote, consider the federal changes on eligibility, acknowledging differences between the new approach and the state's plan. Evan Bush with the Seattle Times reports. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we return with national news, we'll talk about the first woman executed by the federal government since the 50s and more. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is the national news. The House has voted to impeach Donald Trump on the charge of incitement of insurrection after the president incited a violent mob to storm the Capitol last week, resulting in 5 deaths. The final vote was 232 to 197, with 10 House Republicans supporting the measure. These votes made it the most bipartisan presidential impeachment in history, The Guardian reports. In comparison, only 5 Democrats voted to impeach Bill Clinton in 1998. Trump has become the first president in U.S. history to ever be impeached by the House twice. The matter will now go before the Senate, which will decide whether Trump should be convicted and removed from office. The trial will likely conclude after Joe Biden takes office anyway, but a conviction will prevent Trump from running for elected office ever again. The Trump administration on Wednesday proposed weakening environmental protections for millions of acres of Californian desert, allowing more room for wind and solar energy projects, mining, and broadband infrastructure. The move is the latest in a string of last-minute proposals from the outgoing administration to accelerate development on public land, Reuters reports. It would amend an effort hashed with the state of California during Barack Obama's presidency that set aside areas for renewable energy development. The U.S. Department of Interior said in a notice that its recommended changes would reduce so-called areas of critical environmental concern, lands that require special protection, by 1.8 million acres, and trim California desert national conservation lands, which are closed to energy development, by 2.2 million acres. The Illinois House on Wednesday elected its first Black speaker to represent the longest-serving legislative leader in modern U.S. history, picking Democratic Representative Emmanuel Chris Welsh from the job and pushing aside Michael Madigan due to an ongoing bribery investigation. Madigan has served as Speaker for 36 of the past 38 years, but a vote Sunday by members of the Democratic caucus signaled he lacked enough support to keep the gavel. He suspended his Speaker campaign the next day, John O'Connor with the AP reports. Last summer, Madigan was identified in a Justice Department investigation as the beneficiary of a years-long bribery venture involving ComEd. It has thus far yielded a $200 million fine on the utility giant, a ComEd executive's guilty plea, and indictments of 4 others, including Madigan's closest confidant. Madigan has not been charged with the crime and has denied wrongdoing. Coronavirus deaths in the U.S. hit another one-day high at over 4,300, with the country's attention focused largely on the fallout from the deadly uprising at the Capitol. The nation's overall death toll from COVID-19 has eclipsed 380,000, according to Johns Hopkins University. Confirmed infections have topped 22.8 million. Arizona and California have been among the hardest hit states. The daily figure is subject to revision, but deaths have been rising sharply over the past 2.5 months, and the country is now in the most lethal phase of the outbreak yet. New cases are running at nearly 250,000 per day on average, AP reports. It comes as the state leaders around the U.S. are increasingly pushing for schools to reopen this winter, pressuring them even, as teachers begin to gain access to the vaccine against a raging pandemic. A Kansas woman was executed Wednesday by the federal government, the first time in nearly 7 decades that the U.S. government has put to death a female inmate. Lisa Montgomery, 52, was pronounced dead at 1:31 a.m. after receiving a lethal injection at the federal prison complex in Terre Haute, Indiana. She was the 11th prisoner executed at the facility since July, when President Trump resumed the practice, AP's Michael Tarm and Heather Hollingsworth report. It comes after hours of legal wrangling before the Supreme Court cleared the way for the execution to move forward. Montgomery was the first of the final 3 federal inmates scheduled to die before the next week's inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden, who is expected to discontinue federal executions. Former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, his health director, and other ex-officials have been told they're being charged after a new investigation of the Flint water scandal, which devastated the majority black city with lead-contaminated water and was blamed for a deadly outbreak of Legionnaire's disease in 2014 to 2015, the Associated Press has learned. The Attorney General's office declined to comment on details of the ongoing investigation. Snyder, a Republican who has been out of office for 2 years, was governor when state-appointed managers in Flint switched the city's water to the Flint River in 2014 as a cost-saving step while a pipeline was being built to Lake Huron. The 2014 disaster made Flint a nationwide symbol of governmental mismanagement, with residents lining up for bottled water and parents fearing that their children had suffered permanent harm. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. When we come back with global news, you'll hear about the Ugandan internet blackout and election and more. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is the global news. Major cities across Turkey face running out of water in the next few months, with warnings Istanbul has less than 45 days of water left. Poor rainfall has led to the country's most severe drought in a decade and put the megacity of 17 million people close to running completely out of water, according to Turkey's Chamber of Chemical Engineers. The mayor of Ankara said earlier this month the capital had another 110 days' worth in dams and reservoirs, the Guardian's Bethan McKernan reports. Turkey is considered a water-stressed country and has faced several droughts since the 1980s due to a combination of population growth, industrialization, urban sprawl, and climate change. Turkey has long prioritized economic growth over environmental concerns. It remains the only G20 country, apart from the US, yet to ratify the 2015 Paris Agreement. Ugandan authorities appeared to cut off internet access in the country Wednesday night on the eve of a tense presidential election tomorrow. A lawyer for leading opposition candidate Bobi Wine said all contact had been lost with him, Rodney Muhumuza with AP reports. The U.S.-based counsel for Wine, Bruce Afran, told reporters that the candidate, quote, is now in his compound with his wife and a single staff member who is unarmed and is not security personnel. Security and police are stationed outside his home and effectively encircled it. Afran said he feared Wine, a popular young singer and lawmaker, will once again be arrested. He warned that, quote, we're going to see protests on the streets if they believe longtime President Yoweri Museveni is declared the winner of Thursday's vote because of fraud. More than 80 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, have been killed in the latest attack to afflict Western Ethiopia, according to the country's National Human Rights Commission. Aaron Masho, the spokesman of the Ethiopian Rights Commission, told Al Jazeera the massacre took place on Tuesday between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. in a region with borders Sudan and South Sudan. There was no claim of responsibility and no immediate information about the identity of the attackers. The penetrators had not been apprehended by the authorities yet. Some 207 people were killed in one attack on December 23rd alone. Masho said, quote, thousands of people have been displaced due to the continuing violence in Metakel. One of Italy's largest ever mafia trials kicked off Wednesday with more than 330 suspected mobsters and their associates facing an array of charges, including extortion, drug trafficking, and theft. The case targets the Ndrangheta clan, which is based in Calabria and is considered the most powerful mafia group in the country. But the initial hearing hit an immediate snag after the three judges assigned to the case asked to be recused, saying they had been involved in earlier aspects of the investigation. Many of the accused are white-collar workers, including lawyers, accountants, business people, local politicians, and policemen, who Chief Prosecutor Nicola Gratteri says willfully aided the clan in building its empire. Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin formally apologized on Wednesday for the state's quote-unquote profound failure in its treatment of unmarried mothers and their babies in a network of Catholic church-run homes from the 1920s to the 1990s. A government commission report published on Tuesday found an appalling mortality rate of around 15% among children born at the homes, reflecting brutal living conditions. Around 9,000 children died in all, Reuters reports. Anonymous testimony from residents compared the institutions to prisons where they were verbally abused by nuns while women suffered through traumatic labors without any pain relief. A coalition of survivors groups on Tuesday said the report was truly shocking, but it had mixed feelings because it did not fully account for the role the state played in running the homes and in separating single mothers from their babies. Brazil's right-wing president Jair Bolsonaro has tried to sabotage efforts to slow the spread of COVID-19 in his country and pursued policies that undermine the rights of Brazilians, said the Human Rights Watch on Wednesday. The Supreme Court, Congress, and other institutions have stepped up to protect Brazilians and blocked some of Bolsonaro's most damaging policies, the rights group said in the Brazil chapter of its annual World Report. The group's executive director predicted that Washington will join the European Union in pressuring Bolsonaro's government to protect the Amazon from deforestation under the incoming administration of U.S. President-elect Joe Biden. The top court also intervened to stop this government from withholding COVID-19 data from the public, Anthony Bodel of Reuters reports. In July, it ordered the administration to draft a plan to protect Brazil's vulnerable indigenous peoples from the pandemic, while Congress passed a bill forcing it to provide emergency health care to indigenous communities. This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio .world. When we come back with sports, we'll hear about Harden leaving the Rockets and more. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio World. This is the sports news. The Philadelphia Eagles won't be penalized after the NFL looked into the way the team handled its quarterback decisions in the final regular season game against Washington. Two people familiar with the decision told the Associated Press on Wednesday. Head coach Doug Peterson, who was fired by Philadelphia on Monday, removed Jalen Hurts from third-string quarterback Nate Sudfeld in the fourth quarter of a 20-14 loss on January 3rd. The Eagles trailed by a field goal when Sudfeld, who hadn't thrown a pass in the game since 2018, entered. He was picked on his second attempt and also lost a fumble. The loss gave Philadelphia the 6th pick in the draft instead of the 9th. The NFL has never seen a playoff matchup quite like the upcoming one between Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Drew Brees' New Orleans Saints. A pair of quarterbacks in their 40s, still thriving on the playoff stage at an age when nearly every other great passer in NFL history was already enjoying retirement, AP's Josh Dubow reports. Brees will take on the field for the Saints on Sunday, 2 days after turning 42, as a young gun in the matchup against a 43-year-old Brady, who has shattered nearly every record for longevity in the NFL. The Brooklyn Nets have agreed to acquire 3-time scoring champion James Harden from the Houston Rockets, a deal that reunites him with Kevin Durant and gives him the move that he has sought for weeks, said a person with knowledge of the situation. Harden is going to the Nets as part of a 4-team deal that also involves Indiana and Cleveland, according to the person who spoke to the Associated Press Wednesday on condition of anonymity. It was obvious the end was nearing Wednesday when the Rockets told him they didn't want him at practice after his inflammatory comments about the team. The Rockets are just 3-6 so far this season, and only Minnesota has a worse record in the Western Conference. The team is clearly in disarray, and new arrival John Wall called the situation rocky. Contact tracing issues involving the Phoenix Suns and Washington Wizards forced the NBA to postpone 3 more games Wednesday, raising the league-wide total from this week alone to 8. The reason in all three cases was the same, that the Suns and Wizards wouldn't have enough players cleared to participate, AP reports. The NBA also revealed Wednesday that 16 players, by far the most in a 1-week period since training camp started, returned positive COVID-19 tests between January 6th and Tuesday. With 497 players tested, that reflects a positivity rate of 3.2%. It remains very possible that more games may have to be postponed in a turbulent week that also saw the league and the Players Association release updated rules strictly limiting players from venturing away from their homes or hotels. Major League Baseball is suspending all political contributions in the wake of last week's invasion of the U.S. Capitol by a mob loyal to President Donald Trump, joining a wave of major corporations rethinking their efforts to lobby Washington. Following the insurrection last week by Trump supporters while Congress attempted to certify the results of the presidential election, many companies have said they will avoid making donations to members of the House and Senate who voted to overturn President-elect Joe Biden's victory over Trump. Others, like MLB, have postponed political giving to both political parties altogether. The MLB is the first of the major professional sports leagues to say it would alter its lobbying strategy in the wake of the deadly Capitol Hill riots, Jake Seiner of the Associated Press reports. Hisashi Uwikama, one of the most successful pitchers in Mariners franchise history, has returned to the organization in a coaching capacity. The team announced Tuesday that Uwikama has been hired as a special assignment coach that will report directly to General Manager Jerry Dipoto. He will start his work during Major League Spring Training, which is expected to begin on time in mid-February, the Seattle Times' Ryan DeVish reports. Per the Mariners, Iwakuma will work with pitchers and pitching instructors at all levels in his new role and will periodically visit the team's minor league affiliates during the season and also spend time with the big league club. He will also assist Manabu Noto in scouting players in Japan. Now it's time to go over tonight's show plugs. We've got a lot of them. After this, Heartbeat will discuss the issues of corporate America with white supremacy and the siege on the Capitol with guest Joy Pratt Stanford. Heartbeat is live Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time on Rainier Avenue Radio, hosted by Cindy Bright. Then, we're chopping it up with the worthy Johannes. Fresh Juice is live Wednesdays from 9 to 11 p.m. Pacific Time on Rainier Avenue Radio, hosted by D-Money, Jeff Patron, and Taylor Hart. Call in with your thoughts and opinions on the live RAR hotline at 206-290-9685. Rainier Avenue Radio is proud to be the broadcast partner for one of the oldest and largest celebrations of Dr. King's holiday in the country by MLK Seattle. Tune into Rainier Avenue Radio for the premiere broadcast, including interviews with the film producer and director. The 39th annual MLK Rally and March will be broadcasted live on RainierAvenueRadio.world, Facebook, and Twitch. Monday, January the 18th. The rally starts at 11 a.m. and the march begins at noon. For more info, go to www.seattlemlkcoalition.org. That's www.seattlemlkcoalition.org. And there's a special broadcast going on live this Thursday at 6 p.m. You deserve to be heard and understood. It's not easy in today's climate. Racial discrimination, social upheaval, isolation, not to mention the very real mental health effects of historical and generational trauma. Saying it's not easy to navigate this world is an understatement. Girmaiza Hilai and NAMI Seattle will be hosting a live Black mental health town hall. Panelists from King County, NAMI Seattle, and mental health professionals will be discussing the impact of racial, historical, and generational trauma combined with the effects of these tumultuous times on the mental health of Black people. For allies like me, this is an opportunity to gain understanding through listening. Remember, that's this Thursday at 6 p.m. on Facebook, Twitch, and the Rainier Avenue Radio app. That's Thursday. This has been the news on RainierAvenueRadio.world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.